It's easy to make the veteran too heroic, too brave. All the rhetoric that associate with veterans tends to glorify and make it more macho and more courageous than it really was.
Morning.
Howdy. As far as you can go in this, water's up over the road this morning.
Is it deep?
Yep. There's a way to climb up there, not cross the creek.
Is it far?
A ways. Up there? Yep.
Let's hit it.
When you get a group of guys who have been through a war, we understand that it's not all heroism. You know, that when somebody's wounded, it can be wounded by accident, just stepping on a landmine. It had nothing to do with charging a bunker or advancing under fire, just pure bad luck. And veterans understand that it's not all heroism in a war. A lot of it's ducking and saying, "Dear Jesus, I don't want to die, I don't want to die."
History ends up being, a package of myths. We remember the past in ways that are convenient for us to remember the past. We tend to remember the past in ways that sanitize the past.
Just the other side of this rise.
No sweat.
Man, all we need is some ammo and a weapon, and this would be just like being in the Nam. Coming in from an ambush or something.
Hope the hell this is the last bush I ever pull.
You guys griping already?
No way, GI.
I'm just exercising my First Amendment rights. Congress shall pass no law abridging the right of an American to bitch about anything.
Well, if you can't hack it, pack it in. Nobody's ordering you to make this, huh?
Can it, Hazelton? No one's shirking.
We're all in this together, aren't we?
God help us.
The actual experience of war and of combat was not something that made you better because you went through it, made you stronger. It was actually something that exacted a terrible toll, and that therefore that draws you together. I do believe that there are Vietnam veterans who do view it as a brotherhood. To me, that's too strong, but there's an affinity, there's an identity, there's a sense of having shared something that, whether it was positive or negative, nonetheless was important.
Well, boys, this is it.
In combat, oftentimes it feels as if the enemy is not just the enemy, the VC or the NVA. Sometimes it feels as if your own people are trying to kill you in numerous kinds of ways. Friendly fire, stupidity, ignorance. Officers who want to punch their tickets. Go search that tunnel. Go down in it. Well, if you're being told to do that by some officer trying to punch his ticket and get promoted, it feels as if he's trying to kill you by the order. And in some ways, it's more personal.
Not much, is it?
For those of us who served in Vietnam, but then stayed on in the military, we were probably almost as eager to turn our backs on the war as were Americans who had not served and were eager to turn our backs on the war, with of course, the Vietnam veteran, the guy that's caught in the middle and being ignored. And what I mean by that is to be in the Army of the late 70s and the Army of the 1980s was to serve in an institution that had been almost destroyed as a consequence of the war. And all of the organizational energies of the Army at that time were being put to trying to flush Vietnam out of our system, to to get rid of the pathologies that had infected the Army by the end of the war, to reinvent the Army, to try to rebuild the Army. And in that sense, I'm not saying this because I'm proud of it, but I mean, I think I, as a serving officer, didn't particularly pay much attention to the problems of Vietnam veterans, because as a serving officer, I wanted to move beyond that, put Vietnam in the rearview mirror as far as possible.
But for a lot of guys, it was much harder than it was for myself. For example, I could write, and I was writing. Even in graduate school, I was writing stories about Vietnam and working on my first book. And I had a natural outlet for it, or a kind of vent, or I could vent it onto the paper. Whereas other guys go back to a dairy farm or a factory. They didn't have that same outlet for the memories and the terrible recollections of what they'd just been through. So I think my experience was a little atypical because I'm a writer, and I was able to get a lot of it out on the page.
Yeah, boys, we got work to do. Let's have at it.
Family's obliged you boys for doing this.
He was a vet. We're vets. That makes us brothers.
Leave you to it then.
You'll like the rap center. Things start getting tough on the street.
Won't nobody cut you any slack?
You'll find brothers there that can relate to what you're going through. Dudes who are same, trying to cool out behind whatever's going down out here.
It's a club, sort of.
Except there are no dues.
We've paid our dues already, you get me?
The doc comes around now and then.
But he's no problem.
He's a vet. He knows.
He don't bother us.
He knows enough not to.
I laugh at all those guys that say Vietnam screwed them up.
What was you over there, man? A pogue? A rimp? One of them there typewriter commandos?
No way, GI. I was in the engineers. We ran convoy out of Pleiku to fire bases in the Central Highlands. Plenty bad boonies, I'm telling you. Buku ambushes, mines, mortars, machine gun snipers. Only ghosting I did was on R&R. Hell, I bet you're the one with the profile in the rear.
11 Bravo 4P. I humped the jungles of I-Corps for 10 months, 27 1/2 days. 8 months and 4 days carrying an M60 machine gun and 2,000 rounds of ammo. Airborne, baby. All the way.
I imagine that in my parents' generation, I don't think my parents' generation told many war stories from their war, World War II, but to the extent that they used the phrase war story, it would have been, they would have meant it as an authentic account of an actual event. But I mean, by the time you get to the 60s and the 70s, everything is ironic, everything is sarcastic, everything is, nothing is sacred any longer. And so war story became, self-aggrandizing yarn about something that you supposedly did, that you're telling in order to try to impress somebody else, not actually a serious account of an actual event.
When someone would say in Vietnam, you're doing a John Wayne, and partly it was yeah, good going, but partly it was criticizing, like you were being cartoonish and over the top and kind of acting a part. You're not really that way. You're just trying to be John Wayne. It was partly a kind of laughing criticism. Say, come on, cut it out. Stop trying to be John Wayne on me. John Wayne had become a symbol. I mean, of the because of Sands of Iwo Jima and some of these World War II films he was in, had become a symbol of kind of military rectitude, doing the right thing and sacrificing your life at the end of the story and dying the hero. And in Vietnam, there was a sense of heroism gone sour.
I was a door gunner.
What a blast that was. Helicopter pilot would say, "Free fire zone, gentlemen. Pick your targets. We blow away buffaloes, pagodas, any damn thing that moved and a lot more that didn't." Runners are what I liked. You catch a dink, breaking into the open, running for a spider hole. You had to lead them just right.
Newman told me he was a door gunner too. He said it was a bad day if he didn't nail at least one gook in his buff. He hated the place. Just the way I did.
Newman and me used to drink in this bar after the rap sessions. He didn't drink much to start with, but he sure caught up in a hurry. As it all came tumbling out, he'd drink to put it back in again. To keep it under control. To keep that dead world dead. Lending out in those meetings was great while we were all together, but leaving, being alone, that was hell. It's just like it is in the NAM. It's bad luck to get to know anybody. To really feel like you're friends. 'Cause as soon as you do, you jinx them. Blam! They get themselves wasted. Quick or slow, one way or another. They leave. And you're alone. That's what it amounts to, you jinx them. And they leave that on you. Well, I don't need anyone laying any more of that crap on me. You know what I mean? There ain't nobody seen what I seen. I gotta watch out for my ass first. I got my beer, I got my shooters, I don't need the grief. I can't get to know you, and you best not get to know me. We can be drinking buddies, that's all right, that's fine. But don't get too personal, okay? Because otherwise, it will all turn to crap. You roger what I'm saying here? Bartender. Bartender. What'll this buy me? Another round? One final round for me and my newbie brother here. One round for two weary warriors of that big little war you love to hate.
It's easy to homogenize Vietnam veterans or veterans of any war and kind of put them into a category and they're all alike, so it's thought. But in fact, among Vietnam veterans, there's a major divide between those who think we should have, nuked Hanoi and we were stopped from winning or prevented from winning by Congress and American public opinion, the press. And there are others who believe that we could not have won. It was a civil war, and no matter how many, we could have killed 2 million more Vietnamese or 8 million more, that no matter what we'd done, there still would have been a resistance to an occupation and to, it was a nationalistic society and still is to this day, fiercely proud of being Vietnamese. And that, so there are those of us who believe, myself among them, that you can't win in a situation like that. In fact, there are many of us who believe that we were manufacturing enemies, that a stray round would hit a little kid and you got an angry mom and an angry dad, an angry uncle, brother, neighbor, and the more destruction you wreak on a country, the more enemy soldiers you're going to be manufacturing. So this divide among Vietnam veterans, I think, endures to this day.
Well, I do think there's a divide. I mean, I suspect that the divide over Vietnam among Vietnam veterans is not really all that dissimilar from the divide over Vietnam among non-veterans, in the American population generally. Now, you could characterize the divide in many ways. It could be that we did too little or we did too much. I think the most fundamental divide would be between those who at this date, view the war as justified, as necessary, as an honorable cause that somehow went awry, on the one hand, and those, on the other hand, who think that the war was misbegotten from the very outset and should never have been undertaken in the first place.
But Newman was seriously sick, man. He had to have care, constant care. Like the time I drove him to that special clinic the VA had up north. I took him up there because he didn't have any other way of getting there. So I took him. Somebody had to.
We all tried to help him. We still are.
You got that right.
He told me he was having a hard time keeping a job. He couldn't stand the strain. So I gave him a job. Couldn't keep it either. Hell, I kept him on a couple of months after he stopped showing up for work. I don't think he could work for anybody. Or would if he could.
He was sick, man. He couldn't work. Stress made him weird out, man. You didn't understand him. If you had, you would have done more for him than just give him a job.
I was a friend, all right. Too good a friend for his own good. Hell, I did more for him than either one of you guys. Oh, what the hell does that matter? My supporting him didn't do him any good either. The point is, that was his game. Hustling the system. Hustling everybody.
That ain't the way he was. At least not when I knew him. I'm not saying he didn't get to that place. I saw him less and less after he got married.
Yeah, well, the Newman I knew was sick, all right. Sick from dudes like you coddling him. He didn't need dudes telling him he was sick. That's what the public wants us to think, that we're all too sick to function. Something wrong with us. We're wrong over there, and wrong now, wrong no matter what we do.
The dude that was wrong was the dude that sent us.
Yeah, well, I'm not wrong.
That's what Newman thought, that he wasn't wrong. A lot of good that did him. It doesn't matter what we think. What matters is that none of us did enough to stop what happened. That's why we're all here, right? We owe the dude, am I right? If we'd done a little more...
If a frog had wings, he wouldn't bump his ass so much.
Some bets ain't for real. They hear a dude tell his war stories, and they've got to come up with one to top it. You can block out what's real and what isn't. Make up stories so terrifying that the horror you know is real seems pale and ordinary in comparison. So in the end, it's hard to trust anybody, even yourself.
I mean, these groups are effective because it gives them an outlet to talk about it. You can't go to a cocktail party and say, I want to hear about Nam. I mean, nobody will want to listen to you, and there's nothing you could really say that anybody could identify with. But in a rap group, everybody identifies. All the guys have been through the war, and they have a common parlance and a common understanding of the details of what somebody's been through. And so I think it has the effect of providing kind of a door can open, and you can kind of walk through the door and release a little bit of the horror from your memory.
I hate what I did over there, man. What I saw others do and didn't stop them. I hate that. Every bit of it. And I hate myself, too. I do. But I can't do nothing about that. Not now. It's done. It is a part of me, and I cannot get rid of it.
Yes, I could, Newman said. I could if I wanted to bad enough. Nam was a poison. That's what he said. Cancer, eating away your heart from the inside out. You had to give it antidote constantly. Neutralize it. Ground it to something, or else you would short circuit and burn out. He helped me. I won't deny that. He helped me more than he helped himself. And I tried to pay him back. Help him when his marriage broke and things started falling apart. We hit the road again. But ended up back here with new doctors, new scripts, trying for a new start. We were at the track one night and we met these two girls. They were wild.
What happens in Vietnam, I think, for a period of time, is that we go from idealization to empathy to casting the soldier in a negative light. That portrayal of the soldier in popular culture that happened sort of at the latter stages and in the immediate aftermath of the Vietnam War, I think both reflected the way that many Americans had come to see war and the warrior, but of course it also reinforced the way that many Americans had come to see war and the warrior. And I think contributed, therefore, to a sense of Vietnam veterans as damaged.
Newman, he got stuck on one of them and ended up marrying her. He could have been keeping her away from us on purpose. He could have thought that one of us would steal her.
One did. Because she ended up leaving him.
I knew him when he was married. That's when I give him a job. Look, I'll admit that he was good-hearted. Too good-hearted for his own good. Man's got to have a little steel in him. Newman's was all melted down.
He wasn't just one person. He was 2 or 3 guys wrapped up inside of one body, just like Ski says. He hated himself more and more. And he hated the VA for what they made of him, a doper, a boozer, a basket case. Newman thought all along he was fighting the system. All he was doing was fighting himself, what the system made of him. Every day he was alive was a struggle. Buy the farm. Cash the ticket, said one side of his brain. Hang on. Tough it out, said the other. Who to listen to? Which voice to believe? Who am I really?
Question never got answered. He didn't know. And none of us helped him to find out.
Oh, bull. You believe that crap? You're just as messed up as he was.
Maybe so. Maybe I am. Maybe we all are. Is that a crime?
Yeah. In my book, it is. Look, now, don't lay that loony business on me, because I don't buy it. It's just like in the NAM. He was looking for a profile that would keep him out of contact. Contact with the real world.
Contact with the enemy. I can dig it.
I'm telling you, I did everything I could. But somewhere, a man has got to take hold of himself. At some point, he's got to be responsible for his own ass. Nobody can fix what's inside his head but him. Shrinks can't do it. The VA sure won't. The dope won't. You and I can't. A man has got to do it himself.
There it is.
I know. I found out for myself the hard way. Shit, I was a wild man. I beat up on people. My first marriage broke up. I leave the house one morning. When I come home, she's gone. I knew I had to get hold of myself. I started working out, get myself in shape. I pumped that damn weight machine till I didn't know if it was me pushing it or it pushing me. Worked out till I was so exhausted, not even the nightmares would wake me. Got a second job, Started my own business. Borrowed money, went into debt. Gave myself something real to worry about. You do whatever the hell you have to do to go on, but do it.
When you go through trauma, it's hard to explain why it was traumatic, and it's hard to talk about. And there's a way of talking about, say, a war, being in combat, in a kind of shorthand that another veteran will understand, the lingo, the language associated with whatever you're talking about. That person will have images in his mind that whereas someone that hasn't been through a war may not have those images. So it's just easy. It's easier to converse for all kinds of linguistic reasons and experiential reasons than with someone who hasn't been through it. And so as a result, you get common bonds. You share, memories and experiences and pictures of helicopters or of elephant grass swaying in the, under the stir of a helicopter's blades, images of coming in on a helicopter in a combat assault, and what it looks like as you get closer and closer to a hot LZ. You have memories of laughter and of good times together, and memories of horror. And it's so much easier to have a conversation with somebody who's been through it because you don't have to explain every little detail.
Newman tripped a wire, and it blew him away, that's all. Nobody's fault. It's just like the Nam. Life's a minefield. You don't even know you're in it till it blows up under you.
I don't think it's that simple. Newman wasn't a dummy. Hell, he even had a couple of years of college. If you knew him like I did, if you really knew him, you wouldn't say that. You wouldn't even think it. Look, I know what I'm talking about here. We were tight. We hitched all over this country.
I remember this one time. We were hitchhiking across I-40 trying to get to the West Coast for the winter. And we came across this guy who was changing a tire. Well, he said he appreciated our help, but he just couldn't give us a lift. I was about to whack this guy and take off in his car. But Newman said no.
Traumatic isn't the word. That's too silly and abstract a word. It's so much more than that. It's an experience that one's gone through on a daily, minute-by-minute, second-by-second basis that you could no more eradicate it from your memory than you could eradicate your father or your mother or some important high school teacher. You can't eradicate it. It defines, in part, who you are for the rest of your life. And so you can't forget it.
It was while we were on the road that Newman told me about his wife and kid in Saigon. How he kept re-upping for the Nam just to see him. How after the North Vietnamese captured the South, he never heard from him again. He said he used to look at pictures of refugees in the magazines, on television in hopes of seeing them, but he never did.
And, veterans are always given advice, especially Vietnam veterans, put it behind you, forget it, get on with your life. But that's like saying, forget your childhood. You can't forget it. It's part of who you are. You couldn't erase it if you tried. And on top of that, I pretty much believe that you shouldn't. Sometimes it's good to keep picking at scabs, especially if they're got some. It's good to remind yourself of, boy, I was in that rice paddy that day and I saw this. And to remind yourself of it, you can appreciate what's around you. You can appreciate peace more than, say, somebody who hadn't had it. You can appreciate a cold Coke on a hot day when you have that little memory of, oh man, that day when I was drinking this tepid paddy water and it wasn't a cube of ice in sight. That there's something to be said for memory and for remembering what you had gone through in your life, even if they're bad memories, because you can learn from them and you can help you get through a bad time in your life by saying, well, things are pretty bad now, But 40 years ago in that rice paddy, things were a hell of a lot worse. And if I got through that, I can damn sure make it through this.
I had a wife and kid in Cholon. I'd see 'em when I could, on them country R&Rs. I'd stay AWOL for months. Go back when I felt like it, or when I could feel the MPs closing in. They'd stop you in the street, and if your name was on their list, back up country you'd go. I'd go back, lose a stripe, go right back to the line. I didn't care. I was just a kid. Bring on, Charlie Gook. I've been hit so many times. I was on the tarmac at Quezon unloading the C-130. Rounds started popping all around us.
You was at Quezon?
That's firm.
When?
Christmas '67 till Easter. Then I went to Da Nang. Well, they tried to get me back to the Rock. I wasn't about to be that crazy. I stayed AWOL, sick bay, KP, any damn thing. My mama didn't raise no fool.
67. You know Newman on the Rock?
Did I say 67? I'm in 68.
Strange you'd forget what year you were in the NAM. Old Newman. And now he had some wild stories about Quezon. I tell you, that first group of us who was in the rap center, we was tough. Didn't any of us trust a soul for the longest time. No, I didn't.
We did right, whatever we did. We did what we were supposed to do. We deserve more than we're getting.
More what?
I don't know, respect maybe? I don't know. I do know we're getting the short end of the stick. I know you grunts hated us guys in the support units. You had it rough, I know that. I'll never know what you saw, what you did, all that physical stuff, humping the boonies. I respect you for that. I do. But I want you to know something. When you're in the deep serious, we're all the same. I don't care if you're in the front lines or in the rear. When the rockets start dropping all around you, there ain't no difference between us. You can get just as dead on berm guard as you can walking point. Believe me, I know. I know.
If you've got something to say, say it.
This dude from New York and I had become buddies. We finally drew guard duty on the same night. The company had the same bunkers each night. So we drove the first sergeant's Jeep down there and stashed a couple of cases of beer before the guard was formed. We were going to party down. We stretched out across the top of this bunker, and this dude starts to pop open a beer. Slap. His head explodes. A gook sniper wastes him. Man, pieces of his brain splattered all over my shirt. I still feel them.
The guys with whom I'm still in contact, there aren't many, maybe 10, I think feel that because they were in combat, and because they watched friends die, because some of them were wounded, they have more of a stake in believing the war was right. I gave a lot, and I watched a lot, and so I've got to believe that it was not in vain. Certainly the families of Vietnam veterans who were killed or wounded, it's hard to say, well, it was for nothing, or it was in a bad cause. It's a hard step to take. I think psychologically, if you've been in it, you're kind of prone to try to find every reason you can to make your sacrifice mean something to yourself, even if the evidence suggests it may have been in vain.
And when I come out of that shirt, was like I was taking off his face. What was left of him was all over me. I don't know about you guys, but I can't carry the weight of another brother's death. I can't. I won't. There's got to be a limit. Hell, I did everything I could for Newman. I give him every break, but he just wouldn't stick. Any of you guys seen Newman?
Haven't seen him.
We'd go places together, take our wives, go out to eat, go to the movies. Look, I worked hard at being his friend. I truly did. I knew he had problems, but how far is too far? This is the boss man, you read me? Add up what we owe Newman and put a pink slip with his pay. I'm letting him go. What? He's fired. How about it, Newman? They get it right.
Are you okay?
You know, these Nam movies used to bother me.
Let's go.
You see the dudes in them
All
do
right.
so many stupid things that ain't real no more. Just not real, you know what I mean? Oh, yeah, some of it put you there. The uniforms, the weapons, they're right. But it feels phony, don't it? I mean, we were never that crazy, were we?
During the early days of World War II, as part of the general propaganda campaign to promote popular support for the war, Hollywood produced images of the American soldier that were idealized, not simply empathetic, but portrayed the American soldier, or made the American soldier into an icon of American culture. And not so much They Were Expendable, which is a great film, although it's a film that came out after the war. If I'm not mistaken, it came out in 1946. But setting that film aside, the figure of John Wayne during the war years he may well have been the embodiment of this idealized American soldier. Not him alone. You could think of other films, 30 Seconds Over Tokyo with Van Johnson and Spencer Tracy. I'm not sure that image really extended beyond the war.
And I think that after the war in Vietnam, that there was a tendency on the part of, especially of filmmakers, to latch onto stories or manufacture stories that had to do with the difficulties of coming to terms with peacetime. Partly because they were really different kinds of wars. World War II was a highly popular war. Vietnam was a very divisive war. They were wholly different experiences, and I think the veterans who returned from World War II, in terms of their psychology, were a lot different from the combat veterans who returned from Vietnam. We went through a war that we knew about, demonstrations on the streets going on, and opposition to the war, even in Congress. Opposition in families, where families would be divided. Whereas in World War II, there was a general consensus. The war is a good war, and we have to fight it. A sense of righteousness, a sense of rectitude, a sense of sacrifice. And in Vietnam, it was a different kind of war to come home from because of all the divisions. And I think that filmmakers in particular wanted to illustrate how different this war was. And so they latched onto Rambo symbols and symbols of psychic distress in a way they didn't from World War II.
That, however, tendency I think, rather quickly began to elicit a pushback, a response. So that by the time we get into the 1980s, or even in the very end of the 1970s, Hollywood, I think, sensing the way the culture generally is changing, once again begins to portray serving soldiers in a positive and indeed idealized light, where a movie like Top Gun would be, the classic example of that.
I'm telling you, I did everything I could for the man. When he left out and we thought it was for good, I took food to his family.
Our life is over together. We don't even discuss the weather. But you live your life for you. I'll live mine for you too, but I won't stand by like a fool while you're living by the golden rule. Golden rule, do unto others. You got that part down right. I know it by the way you're staying out so late at night. Golden rule is how I feel. With your ring upon my hand, there's no use to keep on trying. You're someone else's man. Don't know where to go from here or how to start anew. I've lived a decade of my life for only you. But it's time to laugh and love again. Stop being your fool. Maybe I'll start my new life out with your version of the rule. Golden rule, do unto others. You got that part down right. I know it by the way you're staying out so late at night. Golden rule is how I feel. When you ring upon my hand, there's no use to keep on trying. No use to keep on crying. No use listening to you lying.
I did everything I could. It's all any man can do. When he'd come back from wherever he'd been, I'd take him back, put him on the payroll again. He'd stay gone for months at a time. Finally, after 3 or 4 times, I had to let him go.
Is that the way it was? Human couldn't hold a job. Take a break, it's my turn. The stress, the clock, the everyday same old, same old. Something about it would always get to him. We were forever at the VA. And then when you did get in, it was like, why are you here? What do you want? That place was just like the military. A lifetime of hurry up and wait. You just sat there till they called. And they would call. If not today, tomorrow. Or the next day. Or the next.
I don't think the neglected vet was a myth. I think the veterans were neglected. Even as they are neglected, it was something that substantial numbers of Americans, I think, felt badly about. And by the time you get into the 1980s or so, there's already the beginning of a sort of a sense of guilt in America about the way Vietnam veterans are treated. That there's a general recognition that there was an injustice done. And to some degree, I think that then produced an effort to redress the injustice, to attend to the needs of Vietnam veterans to a degree. By the time you get around 1990 or so, there's a sense of growing recognition that Vietnam vets had been improperly treated, and so that needed to be fixed. I do think that then bleeds over into the notion that it kind of creates a never again syndrome. Never again will we treat veterans the way we treated Vietnam veterans. And that, I think, is at the basis of this whole support the troops fad. That to declare your support for the troops by putting a bumper sticker on your car is in a way to say, is to publicly declare that you will not commit the sins of prior generations of not appreciating the surface of the military. Of course, it's a gesture that has remarkably little content for most people because all they do is put a bumper sticker on their car, and that is the sole, ultimate, and only expression of what it means to support. They don't really make any sacrifices. They just put a bumper sticker on their car.
We decided that we would do our own medication.
Standing in the rain, I'm thinking of you. My eastbound thumb, well, it just turned blue. Kept my ears open, kept my aim low. You know I've done my last night patrol. Well, it's a long, long way to Kentucky when you're coming from Saigon. You know I feel so very, very lucky standing here with these wet boots on.
We knew about this safe hole that a bunch of us had where we'd get together and party. We would drink until daylight shut out the shadows again.
There was also a divide among veterans of any war based on where you were in the war. Were you in Fallujah or were you in Baghdad? Were you in the green zone or were you out in the bush somewhere? So the memories you carry home from the war can be vastly different based on where you were and what your job was. Were you a helicopter pilot? Were you way up in the air and say, a B-52? You saw a totally different war than I saw as a combat soldier, where you'd see little, pebbles and bits of grass and hedges exploding on you.
We went out on this patrol into this ville. It was about dark. We were searching for weapons caches. We didn't find any. All at once, this one hooch explodes. I think we're taking fire. I see a shadow move to my left. I spin. I squeeze off a 20-round burst. I see this little girl spinning in front of the weapon, jumping in my hands. It was all over in a flash. I didn't know. I heard a noise. I saw something move. I didn't know. Black and red, and then red on black, and then red soaking into the ground beneath this black silk doll. This tiny thing. Did I do this? Maybe somebody else saw her. Maybe someone else fired when I did. Maybe she triggered the mine in the hooch. They trained the kids, The kids can stay in the ville. No one suspects them. The kids are supposed to be there, right? The kids, women, old men. That's what the guys in the squad told me. She was VC. That is the way it's got to be. Don't think about it any other way. She was hardcore. Viet Cong. She may have been only 9 or 10, but she was the enemy. So small to die.
I cried. You did what you had to do, the lieutenant said. Did I? What kind of a war uses kids? Waste kids. Little girls. Man, I can still see the blood in her hair, soaking her head wet, soaking the ground beneath her, soaking everywhere.
I gotta say, I don't feel close to veterans who, to this day, feel, that somehow we should have just used more force, raped some more women and killed some more people, burned some more villages, whatever war does, just done more of it. I mean, how many people are you gonna kill before you say enough? 10 million, 8 million? Is there no limit? Is it infinite? Do you just keep blasting the place till it's just concrete and nobody's alive? If there is some place where you say enough, then where is it? And some of these guys, in my opinion, don't set any limit on it all.
We got back together after his old lady split. She'd been laying around on him. Oh, he didn't say so, but I knew. A man gets a certain look in his eyes when he knows his wife is cheating on him. And Newman, he had that look.
Hey! You're pushing dirt back in the hole.
That was where he found him, anyway. Up at our old hole-up, wrapped in an old poncho liner with an empty bottle of sleeping pills clutched in his hand.
He showed me that bottle once. He said it was what gave him faith in the future. If things ever got too bad, he always had a safety valve.
Are you crazy? That combination could kill you.
No such luck.
I don't have any empirical data even to know whether or not Vietnam veterans use drugs more than non-Vietnam veterans of the same socioeconomic class or whatever. I mean, the 60s was a time in which there was rampant drug use, and I think there was great confusion in American society about how to view drugs. There's still considerable confusion in society today. Certainly during the period of time when I served, which was fairly late in the war, there was rampant drug use in country. Heroin was the drug of choice. I took that as a manifestation of the general erosion of good order and discipline in the Army at the time, to the extent that some Vietnam veterans continued to use drugs when they derosed. Again, it's hard for me to know whether or not one could attribute that to Vietnam service and to what extent you would attribute that to what was going on in America at that time.
Then I gave him a pass. A permanent pass to hell. American diplomacy in action.
Cold-blooded murder.
Whatever. It was a blast. We'd go into these people's hooches, slide up to where they was sleeping, and zip! Let them feel the steel.
I'm gonna kill you.
Try it, and I'll peel your Adam's apple.
The people who've made big movies, movie makers, have, for reasons, I think, of drama, to make things interesting, focused on the crazies and the guys who've gone over the edge. And it's hard to make a dramatic movie about a guy who comes back from a war and lives happily ever after. Gets married, has 2 great kids, happy, dies happy, joins his country club. It's not a very dramatic movie. So I think movie makers are prone to want to find, I gotta make a dramatic film or write a dramatic book. And so they'll tend to grab the crazies and the hold-up artists and the drug dealers and the killers, forgetting that by and large most of us came back from the war and slipped back into our lives and tried to lead decent lives afterward. Most of us with some trouble, but we certainly made the effort. So I see both sides of it. On the one hand, most of us did adjust to the war, to coming home from the war, and somehow managed to live with it to one degree or another. But there were some who did go over an edge and stayed over it.
I should have kicked your ass right then.
Standing right here, Papa San.
You ain't worth it.
Yeah, you like to talk about all the help you was to Newman. All you did was help yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, like for one, I know you was banging his old lady the whole time we were up north of that hospital.
Say what?
What makes you say that?
Newman told me you were.
The bitch. She told him.
It ought to be you where he is now. It ought to be you we're planting in this hole.
Me? What about him? He's the one that kept him so damn drunk he couldn't think straight.
Wasn't the booze that killed him. It was the pills. And if you knew he had that damn bottle, why the hell didn't you do something about it?
I tried, man. I took him all the way up north. I took care of him the whole way. He was hurting bad.
So you found yourself on top for a change. I hope you don't forget where you came from. 'Cause it's easy to
You get up here to this
lose
clinic.
way up there.
Doc's gonna fix you up right.
Straight ahead and don't look down. 'Cause hard times never
They're
give
gonna
up.
treat you right for a change. You just watch.
Always scratching at your back door.
Place will be different.
Hard times never give up. They'll eat you up and still come back for more.
They got special training. Maybe some new drugs. You know, something special for PTS.
I know we both had our share. Looking over our shoulders. Feeling restless, tired, and scared.
You know,
Of losing ground as we grow
to tell you the truth, I think you're better off getting away from Ski and
Hard
Hazelton.
times never give up.
Those dudes ain't really your friends, not the way I am.
What's you're afraid of.
Did either one of them offer to drive you up here? Hell no.
Give up. No matter who you
You asked me and I said sure. You needed to get up here.
another day.
Needed somebody to drive you.
Have to scrap and stray.
So here we are.
Unless you're tempted to say that
You rest easy now.
nobody warned you.
Won't be long.
To tell you hard times are just around the corner.
You'll be there before you know it.
Hard times never give up. Hard times. Hard times. Hard times.
Are you sure you want to do this, man? I mean, you don't have to if you don't want to. I know you appreciate me taking you up here and all, but shouldn't you make your wife your beneficiary? I mean, $10,000. That's some buku bucks, man. It would make me feel sort of funny if you were to die or something. You being my friend. Somebody would have brought you up here if I hadn't. Who? I don't know. Somebody. Okay. You want to sign your life insurance over to me? I can't stop you. Just remember, I didn't ask for it. Here. You'll have to sign it.
Are you saying he made you the beneficiary of his GI insurance?
Sick.
So are you.
Yeah, well, I'm not getting any blood money.
Yeah, you got plenty of what you wanted.
Yeah, well, I'm not picking his bones.
Better it goes to him than it goes unclaimed like so many of them.
Ski, what the hell?
Newman didn't give a damn.
When he signed his life insurance over to me, maybe he was hoping that I'd want to kill him. Maybe it was like that. It's like the battle for Way City. Dudes that were pulling security would sign their life insurance over to dudes that were pulling patrol the next day. There's this one dude in my platoon set to collect $100 grand after his squad all got wasted, one man after another. Then he steps on a mine, so he's KIA. So there's nobody to collect.
You were in Way?
Yeah, after Tet in '68.
I thought you said you were in Quezon with the Marines after Tet.
I was in the Army and then the Marines.
The same tour? I ain't never heard of nothing like that.
Well, I was in the Army attached to the Marines sometimes. It was sort of a test program.
Oh, yeah?
You were never in the NOM, were you?
Sure. 67, 68, 69, 3 tours.
No. No tours. No nothing.
Yeah, I was.
You ain't a vet.
A 4-star faker.
Probably never even been in the military.
I see it every day just the way you do.
God, I'll break your lying neck. Go ahead, do it. Don't think I can't. It's dudes like you give vets a bad name with all your made-up war stories.
They ain't made up.
No. I bet they're not. I bet you heard them someplace or another. From some vet you were fixing up to rip off.
Man, hit him hard.
Do it.
Not this time.
What? Where you going?
Leave him.
What?
Leave him! The dude is dinky down, man. He's around the bend. Look at him.
Scumbag ain't half as messed up as he will be when I get through with it. Come on, Ski, let's pound this dude.
It's too easy. Look at that. Why do you think he's doing it?
I don't know, man. I don't care.
Because he wants to be a war hero.
You want to be John Wayne? Huh? You want to be a GI? Dig! Dig, you sorry rat fart. Dig it deep like you knew the Dukes had your range. Dig it fast like the mortars were coming in. Dig till your hands bleed. Feel what it's like to dig your own grave, because you want to know something, Bubba? You are!
Veterans are so different. Some veterans of Vietnam who were in combat tell stories that glorify their experience, that make it seem good, not just glorify, but make it seem right and just, and erase the bad stuff. And those who tell those kinds of stories, they seem to be suffering from a kind of amnesia. That is, they've forgotten how messy it all was, and it didn't feel glorious. It felt scary, and it felt, I'm not sure who's right or wrong. I don't even know who's shooting at me. I mean, it wasn't like World War II where you'd see somebody in a uniform, like wearing a German uniform or a Japanese uniform. These were, in my experience, there were no uniforms on the enemy. I was in a largely Viet Cong area. So we hardly ever had contact with NVA soldiers in uniforms. In fact, never, in my experience. So who's shooting at you? Are they farmers? Are they militia? Are they just people who are ticked off because you just, peed in their well, or you just marched through their paddies, wrecking their rice, or you just burned down a hooch, or who are they?
How old are you really?
30.
So you was about 10 when we was over there. Amazing.
So how close did you really get to the NOM?
Walter Cronkite.
The 5 o'clock follies.
So how come you know so much? I read a lot. I read over 300 books about Vietnam. I go to rap centers and listen to dudes like you tell about what they did over there. I remember. If anybody starts asking too many questions, I move on. Newman, he knew. He didn't care. He said, "You've been to the big Nam. You're still there."
I've told enough stories in my own life through my fiction, and writing them, to know that I'm adding and subtracting and inventing and trying to heighten things for effect. To not literally buy everything that I'm hearing from others. As people tell war stories well after the story is over, there's again a tendency to erase all your personal failings and the fact that I didn't actually get up and do what I was told to do. Instead, I stayed behind that paddy dyke and I kept my head down until that battle was over. Or if I did shoot, I just lifted my rifle and went like that without even looking where I was shooting, just stayed behind the dike. And when the story gets told, instead it's not told about, it's not often told I just lifted my rifle and started shooting blindly. It's just that I started shooting, and it leaves out the scared part. And it makes it sound as if you were aiming and being very brave and standing up under fire. There's a tendency to make heroic one's own behavior, the behavior of your friends, and even of your whole country, forgetting that it was messier than that and more ambiguous than that. And it makes war stories suspect for me. None of them, few of them feel to me to have the gritty ambiguity that's my recollection of Vietnam. It was all ambiguous to me. Even the acts of the greatest courage were ambiguous. Because what was the motive for being so brave? Was it to get your ticket punched, to get a promotion? Or was it to save a friend? Was it to prove yourself that I'm really valorous? Was it just savagery? I'm a mean mother, I'm gonna go hurt somebody. So the motives are so different, and you can't really get your finger on what the real motive was for human behavior. Maybe never in life can we.
My sense of what Hollywood did was to recreate the image of the warrior by creating a new image of war. And again, I would go back to Top Gun as a really significant cultural artifact, I believe, that tells us something. Again, Hollywood reading the culture, informing the culture, trying to make money off the culture. There's this reciprocal kind of relationship. But I think that was it is today, remains today, a significant cultural artifact. And what's significant is not simply that the Tom Cruise character, what's his name, Maverick, Mav, is portrayed in a favorable light as somebody who who gets the girl, who rides fast motorcycles, who wears leather jackets festooned with patches. I mean, it was somebody that any 18-year-old kid would identify with and want to be, right? But Maverick is not a Marine platoon leader. Maverick is a fighter pilot. I mean, Maverick wears, when Maverick goes to work, he looks good. He looks good in a flight suit. He looks good wearing his whites when he goes to the officers' club. Maverick doesn't crawl around in the mud and the dirt. In Bridges at Toko Ri, when William Holden gets shot down towards the end of the movie, he ends up crawling around in the mud and the dirt of Korea. That never happens to Maverick. And to the extent that Top Gun gives us an image of war, it's a very clean war. It's the war of dueling fighter pilots, and it's a war that is decided by the skill of pilots, but it's a skill married to technology.
And this scumbag set to get his insurance money. I'm gonna beat you so bad your own mama won't even know you.
You're smarter than that.
Yeah. If I dirty myself with his blood, I'll just choke the life out of him.
No!
Yeah. And you're gonna help me.
You just don't get it, do you? The war is over.
Man, he desecrated what we did. Hell, Skeet, people think we're crazy enough already without inviting crazies to make up more nonsense. We're gonna do this, Skeet. It's got to be done.
Count me out.
You can't walk away from this.
Watch me.
We owe too many dudes. We owe it to all those guys who didn't come back to settle with this faker. We can't let him cheapen what they died for. Ski!
We have a tendency to want to make heroic a sense of what it is to be American and what America is, and to begin erasing all the bad stuff. And that explains a lot about, say, John Wayne and other kinds of films, like the Indian War films. You know, if he's made the head of the cavalry running to the rescue of the poor wagon train, forgetting that we were committing a kind of genocide, in some cases intentional. You know, places like Washita and, the Wounded Knee. And many of our leaders with the American Indian, saying things like exterminate the brutes. I mean, exterminate. And so once the thing is over, and years later you go to write about it or to make a movie about it, there seems to be a tendency to want to erase the bad stuff and make it seem to build a myth of rectitude through the kinds of films that are made and the kinds of stories that are told, erasing all the ambiguities and all the evil. So in the case of my war, of Vietnam, the mythology is slowly, when it moves toward Rambo, is to erase the My Lai stuff, to erase the daily atrocities of free fire zones and dead civilians, to erase the fact that B-52 bomb, yeah, it can kill the enemy, but doesn't discriminate. It can kill civilians too if it falls in the wrong place, and beaucoup of them. We erase racism. Words like gook, slope, dink, all those epithets we'd use about the enemy, in order to build a new mythology of Rambo, who had sacrificed so much, gotten so little back, and here he's come back to the States, and he's become the avenger for veterans and for those who have been messed over or screwed over in their lives. He stands as a kind of symbol of vengeance. Come home, and that's part of what mythology does. It's a way of glorifying and making heroic that which in the past was not so glorious and not so heroic, really.
I think Ronald Reagan was really the first to understand that there's political utility. The first post-Vietnam politician to appreciate the political utility of identifying himself as a supporter of the troops, as somebody who admires the troops, somebody who respects those who serve. And he may generally have meant that, but he certainly recognized that that was a way to tap a certain sentiment in American society. And I think Clinton learned from Reagan, and I think the younger President Bush also did. Now, once we get into the global war on terror and a very sharp debate over the Iraq War, a debate both whether or not to invade Iraq in the first place, and then a debate about how long to stay in Iraq. I do think that there have been politicians and there have been pundits who have exploited this new empathy for the troops in ways to sustain support for the war or to discredit those who are opposed to the war. in essence by saying that if you support the troops, you have to support the war. Now, people who are opposed to the war have violently rejected that logic, but it's something that has been used, I think, by the hawks in this case.
There has to be a line drawn, in my otherwise it's not American, but you draw a line between supporting troops and supporting a policy. And what happens is that those who are for a war say, if you don't support the policy, you're undermining our troops. You don't support our troops. And it's possible to do both. It's possible to say, I'm all for our guys having enough equipment and surviving, but I don't like the war. I don't believe in the policy. And you can do both. You can say, I'm all for the guys, but I want you to, rethink the policy behind this war. One way to support troops is to pull them out of a bad war. And if a war is unwinnable, or if it's unjustifiable, there are all kinds of reasons for unjust wars. But you don't just say, I'm for any war, because I have to always support our troops. That seems to me a fundamental violation of what it means to be an American.
Wait, damn you!
You don't quit, do you?
Quitters never win.
And winners, what do they get? If we had won over there, what more would we have now than we do? Not a damn thing. I can tell you that. Because you see, we would have still come back with what we got now. What we can't get rid of. Look, once you're a killer, once you've taken another human life, the game changes. You can steal, you can beat up on people, you can do anything you want to do. It don't mean a thing.
You're gonna let this dude rip us off?
Of what? What's he taken? So he's stolen a part of who we were? Well, he can have it. I'll souvenir on my part, buddy. I mean, all that stuff I done in the Nam, he can have it. Because you know what? It's busting my balls.
I want to know something. Tell me something. Where did you break your cherry? Or did you ever actually kill anybody in the Nam?
Did you?
Yeah, sure I did. Yeah. I probably did. I blew a minefield on a bunch of gooks coming through the wire. We didn't find anything the next morning except blood trails, but that don't mean nothing. They never leave their dead behind. I'll tell you one thing, buddy boy. I can kill this lying cheat. Don't you think I can't?
Oh, yeah. You could. The first one's easy. You don't even think about it until it's over. You just do it. But the next one, you feel that one. You feel it through the steel of the trigger. You feel it. You feel the life pouring out of you every time you squeeze off a round. And after the third one, or the fourth one, well, you start looking for ways not to do it.
Who the hell are you anyway? You ain't nobody! You wasn't nobody in the Nam, and you ain't nobody in the world! And who are you? Do you know?
War story is always suspect. I mean, how much of this is true? How much really happened? How much is being revved up? How much is being added? How much is being subtracted?
The falsified image of the American warrior in wartime. John Wayne in World War II. Maverick in the late 1980s. I don't think it'd be fair to say that. That's the only image of the American soldier that Hollywood produces or that Americans have responded to. I think that there is this second image that is empathetic and yet also is willing to acknowledge the extent to which war is dirty and ugly and damages human beings.
Tears burn my eyes while my soul dies choking. I'm tempted yet again just to throw it to the wind and let it find me. ever could be. Why must we succumb to what they tell us to become? Would-be heroes of made-up glories. Fiction kidnaps every mother's child with notions of honor that beguile another generation marching to his pipe, leading our babes down the devil's pipe. True love burns with that awesome flame, and finally now the fire's gone out and all I feel's the pain. I've pledged you my allegiance, I've loved you from the start. How could you use that power to break my heart? It's flames to ashes, ashes to dust. The seed lies waiting in you. For hope springs eternal from some source inside of me. But for it to grow, I must be